Welcome to Focus on B, the video series where I would typically spend about 20 or so minutes playing and talking about a game that I've got some thoughts on, but this time it's only going to be 10 minutes because, once again, I've gone and done it. I've gone and made my own video game. This game is called Ship Swap. It took me a very long time to figure out such an incredible title. What's the gimmick? It's a spaceship-y game. Initially, I actually wanted this to be like a spaceship shooter, but I realized I find those games incredibly boring, even though I do like some of them, as I've made a couple videos on them. Fuck, I died again. So the gimmick with this one, as you can see, you can swap the colors, hence the name of the game. You can swap the colors on your ship, which, as you can clearly see, influences the collision. So if I'm a green ship, as you can see right here, oh, green, 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 green. I want to talk about the design philosophy a little bit before I get into how I made the game. So I believe it is incredibly important for the player to always be made aware of what is going to happen. Do not ever, under any circumstance, throw them into some kind of, into a surprise that isn't justified. So as you can see right here by the level design, I foreshadow everything that's going to happen. So for example here, you get nothing and then it's like a little bit of a break. I like to give my player a break because the game can be pretty intense. So it's like a bit of a break and then yellow, 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 yellow. Oh, okay. Warning shots. A test. Okay. So the player knows they have to be yellow. But then what happens here? They have a choice of two paths. They can either go down or go up. And as you can see, you get these reds. Why is that? Because if they choose to go low, they get yellow, yellow. What are these reds up here? Ah, I have to be red now. That makes sense, and now you have to be fully red under here, right? So red, 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 and then again, red, red on top, or you can pay attention and notice, green, green, there's going to be green, green, right? Then some more greens, and I basically use this design philosophy for the entirety of the game. So if I go to some other level, I think at this point I start to incorporate, this kind of stuff. So look at this. I don't just throw this pattern at you out of nowhere. I keep in mind the fact that the player will most likely be yellow at this point. So I go, okay, if they're yellow, yellow, red, red. And look at that. Yellow, red, red. Or they can turn green and have an easy time going through this green part, and then again, green, green, green. But then again, they should be paying attention to up here because I flip them. Yellow, red, red. You see, that's my philosophy with this game. Or even here, look. Yellow up, yellow down, yellow down, yellow up. Yellow up, yellow down. It's all about call and response. I give a call and the player has to respond. I don't ever just throw a pattern in your face without it being in some ways hinted at previously. So that's the design philosophy out of the way. I really do feel that as I've made more of these games, I have to think about more of these meta aspects of how to design them, as opposed to just figuring out how to make them work. As to how I made this one work, it went through a little bit of a troubled development, if you want to call it that, because the first 4 levels implement a fucking ass-backwards jank system of collision. So at the time, when I started working on this, I wasn't sure how to make it so that the player has a way to respond to different collisions as opposed to just the same one, so that I can make it so that when the player changes color, they can pass through or not pass through certain things. So what did I do? I made a bunch of fucking Area 2D nodes. I just made a bunch of Area 2D nodes that all have their own collision properties. As you can see right over here, they have their own collision properties. And then I painstakingly went in and added collision boxes for every single one, while the actual tile map was just for the sake of the visuals. You know, to show the blocks there. But in reality, I had to do all the shit manually. Then I realized that was absolutely stupid, 4 levels in. So what did I do for level 5? Let me just show you the code real quick for the stupid version. Here's how I did it before. What I did was, I have the area, there it is, on base block body entered, and it plays the death sound, right? And then it, makes it invisible, blah, 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 can move X, can move Y. I do this because I multiply my movement by either 1 or 0 to very, very easily make it so that the player can't move in that direction. It's a bit of a cheat code, almost, but it works really well. Then I wait a little bit, respawn the player, and this right here is how I implemented my checkpoints. So when the player crosses a particular threshold in the stage, so in this case it would be over here, this is my checkpoint, right? As you can see, it's connected to this check. And what happens is when the player touches the checkpoint, right down here. Their respawn becomes this exact point on the map. And that's what I did for checkpoints, because I was playing for the game and like I realized, holy shit, it's frustrating as hell when you get like halfway through this minute-and-a-half long level, because most of the levels are only about a minute and a half if you know what you're doing, and you die like right at the end, and you're like, oh fuck me, now I gotta do the whole thing all over again. And I know that some games are intentionally designed that way, but I decided I don't want to do that. It's not a rhythm game. I was thinking of it being a rhythm game, decided against that ultimately, but still. So I thought, okay, let's make some checkpoints so it's a little easier. But here's how I handled my collision level 5 and onwards. You can see there's nothing on these now. You know why? Because I evolved my stupid into less stupid. So here's what I did. I made a variable called crash, just like how I did with my car game, actually. It's just move and collide vector to right, which means that if anything touches the right side of my character, you know, it triggers a crash. What is the crash? Well, it's the same shit as before. It's just, okay. First, I disable the collision, so we don't have multiple crashes happening per frame. That would be a problem. Plays the death sound, plays the death animation, spawns them, moves them over there, all that shit, right? Actually, wait, what is this? Death, visible, true, position. Oh yeah, it's the death animation itself, because I believe I made the death animation separate? I did, didn't I? Wait, hold on. Yeah, death. Yeah, I made the death animation separate. Why did I do that? I'm working on another game right now, and I didn't do it that way. I just made it part of the character. That's interesting. Maybe I assumed that I would want to maybe delete the... I don't fucking know. Basically, I made it separate. Generally, you wouldn't do that. You would make it part of the actual character. In fact, well, no, what I've done here, I've done this the dumbest way possible. I actually have all of my ships, as you can see here, the different colors, they're all separate sprites that as you can see right here, I control their visibility separately. Why did I do that? I could have just had them as animations. And this isn't like my first game. This was like less than a week ago. Like, come on, man. What the fuck was I thinking? Whatever. Point is, though, it works, right? As far as you guys are concerned, none of this matters. If the game works, right? That's great. Either way, in order to stop the player from exceeding the bounds of where I want them to be, I just have this little if where it's like, okay, if positive position Y, if it's less than this, make it that. If it's more than this, make it that. And this is basically the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. This makes the character move. They move by this much, multiplied by delta, so it's not 1 billion miles an hour. And then this decides whether or not they're able to move. So if I can, again, this is the cheat code I was talking about essentially. And that's pretty much the fundamental. Well, I guess maybe I should elaborate upon how I actually did the collision now that it's better. Essentially, every single one of these is still their own separate layer. I also have this bound. This used to be for collision back in the stupid era of the game right here, but in the smart era, this is only here for the sake of like being a visual ruler, so I don't have to keep looking up here. I can just look at this and be like, ah, this is when the level is over. Easy peasy, right? But other than that, we don't actually need it. But as you can see right here, base, these are my regular white blocks, right? And they occupy all of these different collision layers. The green one only occupies 3 of them. If the player makes themselves green, then they're gonna pass through this. Although I think what I do is I actually make it so the player doesn't touch anything but that. I'm doing something similar for my next game, but it's a little bit iffy there because I'm using more area nodes, and doesn't matter. For this game though, everything works pretty much as you would expect. Then you go here, and as you can see, it doesn't occupy this layer. Here it doesn't occupy this layer, and the bounds, they don't matter anymore. I got my background music, which I wrote in Ableton, and it sounds like this. Okay, I'm not going to play the whole thing, but it's freaking cool. My idea with the song was I wanted to have like a spacey sound, but not like Starman spacey, if that makes sense, from Mega Man 5 with the do-do-do-do-do-do, I wanted it to sound kind of just more, obviously just Mega Man-y, but my idea of spacey was the constant pulsating high notes, and that kind of stuff, and I incorporated it at the end of the core. Let me see if I can actually fast forward to that part of the song. Let's see if that'll work. No. You can't do that. Actually, I can do this. I can just speed it up, mic core it, till we get to that point. I want to show you what I'm talking about. Let me just make it like that, around here. There you go. Listen to this. I don't know. I love those, like, they act almost like as snare hits, those super high notes in the right channel. And yes, I know that NES music is technically monophonic, as in, not just monophonic, it's mono. I should not be able to pan them left and right, but it sounds better in a modern context. Not to mention that the drums, let me tell you, the drums are way more than just one track. They're like 5 tracks just for the drums. All the different snare hits, the hi-hats, all those... Whatever, because I still want it to sound nice, but I did want it to strip it back more than what I typically, when I do my music normally, right? And that's pretty much it for this game. It's called Ship Swap, and I really enjoyed making, you know, something that, like, was so different from my original vision. I might do, like, a UFO-y shooter type game at some point, you know, like an Asteroids clone or something. You know, when I figured out how to, like, make it so that the player preserves their momentum when they move. That was a big moment for me as a game developer. Other than that, though, oh yeah, let me just showcase the backgrounds real quick, and then we'll end it off. So the backgrounds, real simple. Basically, I have these random Google images that I took, and I decreased their color palette. The stars I made myself, and obviously all the ship sprites were made by me, but the rest, you know, I just found them wherever. And then... this is why I don't charge for my games, because I'd probably get in trouble if I did. But anyway, so what I did for the backgrounds is I just have the image, obviously, and it doesn't scroll because we're in space. But in order to give that illusion of movement and speed, it's not actually an illusion, the ship is genuinely moving. But regardless of that, though, I still want it to have like an effect. So what I do is I have these star layers, right? So this one, can you even see it? It's like super subtle. There you go. These extra stars that scroll at their own pace. And then you have these bigger stars, well, bigger, they're more opaque, that don't scroll at all. And then I think I have another, yep, I have another slightly more opaque layer of stars that scrolls a little bit slower. So when you put it all together, it has this really great sort of feeling of depth and layering to the stars, as you can see. And I thought it looked really cool. Also, the depth animation is very simple. It's just like free frames. For my next game, I made a slightly more elaborate depth animation, I'll have you know. It's just for a spaceshipy type of game, I feel like it feels more stylistically appropriate. And also for some of the levels, I have these occasionally passing by, like, scrolling elements. Let me see if this one has it. Does level 6 have one of those where it's like, you're just kind of going through the level and all of a sudden you see this random supernova. Yeah, you see this random planet. Basically, they're just part of another parallax layer. Oh, also have Saturn here for some reason. And they're just scrolling slower. And I just move them all the way over there, but in order for them to not, like, scroll forever, they simply do not have any repeat or anything. Typically, you would set this to whatever your resolution is. In this case, I would make it 200, for example, but I'm not going to do that. And that's, I think that's going to do it. As a little bit of a crash course behind the scenes on this game. Go check it out. It's on itch. It's like 80 megs or something. You just download both the files, you run the exe, and see if you can beat the 8 levels in record time. I mean, there's not a lot of quote-unquote potential for speedrunning because the ship moves at a set speed, but I guess if you want to speedrun it, you just have to not die at any point, and then you can beat it as fast as it could possibly be beaten. And that's gonna do it. Yeah, this has been Focus on B, the video series where I would typically spend about 20 or so minutes talking about a game, but in this case, it's only about 13, 14 minutes because it's one of my own games, and I don't want to show the entire thing, obviously. There's not that much to it, but still. And this has been SwapShip 2025 PC.